A very good evening to each and every one of you gathered here today to this auspicious occasion. We are filled with gratitude for having you here with us to celebrate the second Dr. John L. Sailo Ryntathiang Memorial Oration, a prestigious event organized by Bethany Hospital in honor of the invaluable contributions and sacrifice made by the founder of Bethany Hospital, late Dr. John L. Sailo Ryntathiang, to the healthcare sector and society as a whole. This event is scheduled to be held today, the 10th of October 2023, coinciding with the birthday of our late founder. Before we begin, I would like to seek your cooperation to kindly switch off your mobile phones or kindly put it on flight mode for the next 1 hour to ensure decorum during the oration. Thank you. With no further ado, may I now request Dr. Valencia Marbo, Consultant, Department of Orthopedic, Bethany Hospital, to kindly present the welcome address.
A very warm, pleasant, and meaningful evening to each and every one of you gathered here today. I'm privileged to stand here in your midst on behalf of a large Bethany Hospital, Bethany family, which owes its existence to the person who, although no longer with us, yet his presence is with us today, and I believe in the remaining days as we celebrate his birthday, today and in the coming years through this memorial oration. In Khasi we say, Im ka kirteng sakanam, which means it is a phrase that we use when we talk about someone who has left an indelible mark in the society. And this means the name shall live forever through the good works that are lovingly remembered and treasured. 3 years have passed since he left us. But the name and the fame of our dear founder, director, is alive and striving. And we, the members of Bethany family, shall endeavor and strive to continue to live out the legacy of compassion, care, and commitment that he has left for us to carry forward. Wherever you're seated, I request you to just look around you, because I want you to be aware that this august gathering is made up of people who we, as the Bethany family, consider as friends. Friends of the family, friends of the institution. Not just friends of the health institution, but friends from other institutions, institutions that propagate knowledge, that impart training, and that groom up youngsters to be the torch bearers in whatever field of life they choose. Yes, we have our well-wishers and friends who have stood with us during our violent, stormy days, and who have helped us not just to stay afloat, but to emerge stronger, wiser, and even more resilient as we move forward each day, giving the best that we can to all those who are in need of our services. On that note, here I am, standing as tall as I am and proud to warmly welcome you all with gratitude. You, ki reu rangba kin thei bat shinran. The English equivalent of that would be accomplished ladies and gentlemen, whom we consider our friends. to this second memorial oration of Dr. John Sailo Ryntathiang, the founder-director of Bethany Hospital, Shillong, Bethany Hospital Outreach, Nongpo, which include the OPD service at Umsning, the Diagnostic and Primary Health Care Center at Bernihat. He was also the founder of our college, of the Bethany College of Nursing, soon to be School of Nursing, soon to be the College of Nursing. Besides these, Dr. John Sailo Ryntathiang was also a quiet philanthropist, a lover of nature, an accomplished musician, and an invaluable member of the Ryntathiang clan, a loving and doting father and grandfather to his children and grandchildren, a pillar of strength and comfort to his wife, Mrs. Achula, our present director of the hospital. Yes, a warm, a loving, a kind-hearted, an understanding, and the most easy to get along with boss for us at the hospital. Besides this, he was also a God-loving and a God-fearing man who lived a God-dependent life. Yes, we are gathered here this evening to celebrate the life of this larger-than-life personality. So, our dear friends, I do hope you understand why my welcome address at this time is bereft of names and titles, except for the two guests whom I shall mention shortly. Choosing a speaker for an occasion such as this and for a personality such as Dr. John Sailo has indeed been a Herculean task, to say the least. But finally, the name of Dr. Kivichusa has been unanimously agreed upon. And I'm so proud, I'm so honored to welcome you on this auspicious occasion to this very august gathering to share your golden thoughts and insights. What I would say in Khasi, Simbo Ksiar and Simbo Rupa, golden thoughts. As we celebrate the life of the person of Dr. John Sailo Ryntathiang, and for want of a better word, to express our gratitude to you for accepting our invitation, I would say, Kublai Shibon, Kublai Shihajango Yupi, Dr. Kivichusa, which means thank you with 1,000 bows. With great pleasure, I welcome none other than Nise Miruno, the first Indian Yamaha artist in our midst. What a privilege for us to get a chance to see you in person and in a short while to hear the melodious tune that will be filling this hall as your fingers delicately glide and dance on the keyboard. Welcome you. God bless you. With these words, I hope I have conveyed to you all seated here the warmth, the love, the joy, the thrill that we as members of the Bethany family feel for each of you as you share this evening with us, as we continue our journey of keeping the name and the fame of our dear departed director, Dr. John Sailo Ryntathiang, alive and inspiring today and in all the days to come. The Bethany family shall treasure this evening, made complete by the presence of each and every one of you. I cannot express enough how thankful we are to you all for accepting our invitation. So now, I invite you all to please sit back, relax, listen, learn, and reflect on what we are going to hear this evening, and then go back and try to sow a few seeds of goodness for humanity as we continue our life's journey. Once again, to each of you being here, please feel please feel the heat of the warm welcome that we want to express to you. Thank you, Kublai.
Thank you, ma'am, for your welcoming words and setting the tone for the evening. Now we have a brief introductory visual presentation highlighting the life of our late Dr. John L. Sailo Ryntathiang.
I was thinking, what should I do? How do we develop this? So many ideas came, but amidst all that debate within me, I seem to hear a voice. I think it is a reasoning that became almost like a voice that told me, make use of it for the benefit of others. And I hope that the dream that I had 7 years ago will be the dream to be cherished by every one of us. And I hope that this is not exactly the end of the story. The story is yet to begin.
On her deathbed, his grandmother eagerly waited to bless her newborn grandchild before she left for the heavenly abode. John L. Sailo Ryntathiang was born on October 10, 1951. His father was an army captain, and his mother was a loving wife. He, along with his sister and parents, lived a picture-perfect life until the sudden and untimely death of his father when he was a small child. At a young age, he felt a sense of responsibility towards his mother and sister, helping them in any way he could. His mother, a young widow, became the bread earner of the family, supporting the family on a teacher's salary. Irrespective of the troubles, they were brought up with very strong family values, surrounded by uncles, aunties, and cousins like one big joint family. These strong family bonds reflected in the closeness of the cousins and later be imparted to their children. Being a man who was brought up by a single mother and a sister he had to constantly care for, he developed a sense of protectiveness and respect towards women. Since he was a little boy, he wanted to join the Navy. He would dress up in little Navy attires, but God had bigger plans for him, as he would say. One day, he developed a severely infected boil on his arm. He was unable to even lift it, and he was in excruciating pain. He was taken to Roberts Hospital for treatment. Here, he found his calling to be a doctor. He completed his MBBS in 1976 and returned home in 1978. And in the same year, he married Achula Di Zoute, someone he had known since his childhood. She became his pillar and support as they navigated through every step of life together. In 1984, Nehu funded his postgraduate studies in medicine at Delhi's prestigious All India Institute of Medical Sciences. His efforts and sincerity were not in vain during those 3 trying years. He finished his course with flying colors. Dr. Guleria, his HOD at that time, said, "When Sailo joined, he was 0. Now he is leaving as my best student, which was a great honor for him." In 1987, he returned home and started his first job. In spite having a wife, children, mother, and a sister to care, he never made his condition seem burdensome. To all those around him, he remained genuine and gentle, always cherishing family time and finding humor in everything. Many of his patients who came to his chamber couldn't afford to pay for a consultation. However, he never turned anyone away because they couldn't afford it. His ethic of helping humanity was profoundly rooted, no matter where he worked, be it at Nehu, Roberts, or Woodland Hospital. He was kind and respectful to all. Bethany Medical Center first opened its doors in 1992. Dr. Sailo dared to dream, even on a shoestring budget. In 2002, Bethany Hospital opened its doors as a fully operational multi-specialty hospital, fulfilling a long-held ambition. When traveling to Shillong for treatment, a chowkidar's wife from Nongpo became critically ill and died. He was profoundly moved by the incident and understood the need for a tertiary treatment facility in Ribhoi. So he founded his outreach center in Nongpo on a small plot of land that his mother had inherited. His calling had always been to be a doctor, but it did not describe him on his own. According to him, anything is possible if one puts in enough effort. He was sincere and dedicated in everything he did. Agriculture, building, organizing, and even playing the guitar were among the many ventures he had pursued and completed over the course of his life. Dr. Sailo was a man who valued God and his family above everything else. His sense of family extended to all those who work with and for him. His relations to his uncles and cousins remained close until the end of his life. He would always seek their advice and value their perspective. His wife affectionately referred to him as Isho, which meant my friend. Together they built everything from scratch. They were each other's anchor and support. He was a wonderful role model to his children and grandchildren. He always said, "Little drops of water made the mighty ocean." This lesson was always imparted to his children. He wasn't an avid traveler, but he and his family took a budget trip every year that was more of an educational tour. His grandchildren's birth gave him a new outlook on life. Each one was his greatest source of pride and joy, making the rest of his life filled with fun and joy. In such ways, Dr. Sailo was like an umbrella, embracing and protecting those that fell under his shade. A genuine gentleman with a big heart.
Now we have to go on. What a bumpy ride. Stay. Wait.
Guy, what will you play? unongbo unoktam. Ubala ay yagai ke kani patkalok sli kalong sem joga. Ya kani kasli ke bakarbang. Kasli bansa alam nangne shikamat. Ya ka korim joga achula Ryntathiang. Baki khon ki joga baki ta tete.
1, 2. Happy birthday to you.
Come, I think you can help me. Sing a song on birthday.
In pursuing his dreams, he uplifted our people as well. Very rarely do we see a personal calling to a noble vocation result in such a wide effect for the good of society. We're all familiar with the desperate problems that we face in being life, whether it's political, economic, or social. Dr. John was one of the few people to take up these causes. For most people, it is easy to play along, keep a low profile, and go with the flow, even if one has to make ethical or moral compromises. Because in this society, sometimes even good work is criticized. Only dreamers build institutions, but dreaming is only the beginning. Abdul Kalam famously said, "A dream is not what you see while sleeping. It is something that does not let you sleep." Dreamers are builders who cannot sleep till the dream becomes a reality.
Sorry. And what better way to celebrate the life of such a great man whose contributions extend beyond healthcare. He has left behind a legacy that will live on for generations to come. Once again, we are very delighted to have in our midst Dr. Kethuser Enyo-Kevichusa, an evangelist and apologist. I would like to give a brief introduction of our honorable orator this evening. Following his graduation from Patkai Christian College, Nagaland, Anyo studied theology, earning a BD from Union Biblical Seminary and a master's degree in theology from the University of Oxford. As a Langham Scholar, he earned a PhD from Oxford Centre for Mission Studies, London. He is currently completing a second doctorate from Biola University, USA. He is also the winner of the first Gordon Graham Prize for Naga Literature for his monograph, Forgiveness and Politics, a Critical Appraisal. The list is endless, but it would take forever if I were to name them. So, having said that, with no further delay, let us please welcome Dr. Kethuser Enyo-Kevichusa, our orator this evening, to the podium.
Respected Chairperson, loving hosts, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. When my eldest son was very young, he once asked me, "Papa, you are a doctor, right?" "Yes, I am," I responded very proudly. But then he said to me again, "But Papa, you are not a real doctor, right?" The reason I start with that short little story is because, not being a real doctor, I feel very inadequate to be giving this prestigious oration that is named after this extraordinary and most remarkable man. And to be giving this oration to this distinguished group of people that is assembled here today. But nevertheless, I want to say thank you to the Sailo Ryntathiang family, the leadership of the Bethany hospitals. I really consider this not just a great privilege, but a high honor to be delivering this oration. When I told my extended family that I had been invited for this event, they asked me to convey their greetings to the Sailo Ryntathiang family. There were many, there still are some members of our Kevachasa family who knew Captain Sailo very well and worked with him during his time, even in Nagaland. And I'm also somehow connected to the family from my mother's side through marriage into the Yaden and Sailo family. So although this is a very formal event, and although I am a little nervous, I'm also at the same time, I feel quite at home and relaxed, and I want to enjoy this evening with you. Now, as I thought about what I could speak into, what might be appropriate and worthwhile to say today, I was drawn to the 3 core values upon which the Bethany hospitals are built: compassion, care, and commitment. And what I want to do this evening is offer my fragmentary and patchy reflections on these 3 concepts and 3 core values. And I would hope and pray that someone or another would be edified by a crumb here and would be benefited by a fragment there. The first core value of Bethany Hospital is compassion. Now, the Oxford Handbook on Compassion Science, or of Compassion Science, it defines compassion in relation to empathy. It says that empathy is an emotional experience that is the same or nearly the same as what another person is feeling. So empathy is suffering with or feeling with someone else. But it goes further to say that compassion is not just feeling the pain or suffering of another, but compassion goes further. There is that deep desire in compassion to alleviate the suffering of that person, not just feeling it, but mitigating it. So compassion is more than empathy. A few months back, I was in a conversation with a vet friend of mine who was in the government service. And this man said, being a veterinarian, is much better than being a medical doctor. And I asked him why. He said, well, the benefits, the pay scale and the benefits, they are more or less the same. And with vets, there are no emergencies, there are no night duties, and there's no emotional investment in your work. Even if your patient died, it's okay. You don't really feel compassion. That is what he said. We laughed about it, and I thought he made a good point. But as I reflected further, I came to realize, and I've come to realize that I don't quite agree with what he said anymore. And that's for 2 reasons. Recently, our pet dog at home, it got very sick, so we took him to the vet in Dimapur. But unfortunately, we were a little disappointed with the services there. Not because the vet, doctor, and the staff there, they were incompetent. But we were disappointed because they came across as uncompassionate. So at the advice and the recommendation of some friends, we took our dog to another vet. The name of the clinic was Compassion for Paws. And the whole approach of the staff and the doctors at that clinic, the whole ethos was of compassion. Compassion imbued, as it were, their approach to animal care. So, not all vets are not altogether devoid of compassion. That is what I realized. But there's a second reason why I've come to disagree with my vet friend. During the last 7 years or so, in our family, we faced one family crisis after another, especially with the health of my parents, both of whom passed away between last year and this year. During that time, we went to and we stayed in various hospitals, both in Nagaland and elsewhere in the country. And while we are tremendously grateful for the services that we received, we also experience every now and again firsthand that compassion is not necessarily or naturally an automatic given among medical personnel. And it is absolutely possible for people in the medical profession to render their service without compassion. Not all, I hasten to add, but some, or maybe even few of them. In 1920, or not 1920, in 2020, a book, a very good book, was released. That book was titled, "Without Compassion, There Is No Health Care." And the whole point of that book is to call back medical professionals, to call them back to what is the bedrock of healthcare: compassion. And here's a quotation from that book. "Compassion has lost prominence as the governing tenet of healthcare work. Compassion must first be reaffirmed as the guiding principle at the core of healthcare systems." That is what it says. But why has compassion lost its prominence, we might ask, in healthcare? In the mid-1990s, around 1995, a highly respected professor, he discovered an emotional, a psychological, a mental, and even a physical and physiological condition that people in the field of healthcare are most prone to and are most affected by. In 1995, the man who made this discovery was Professor Charles Figley, and he coined a term for this condition, and he called it compassion fatigue. Interesting term. And here are some of the signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue refers to the emotional and physical exhaustion that can affect helping professionals and caregivers over time. Compassion fatigue leads to and results in becoming desensitized and becoming insensitive to patients and patient stories. Compassion fatigue decreases quality care for patients. Compassion fatigue is manifested in what is called poor bedside manners among doctors and nurses. Compassion fatigue increases medical errors and leads to higher rates of depression, anxiety disorders, and stress leave. Compassion fatigue, he says, degrades the climate of workplace or the climate in the workplace. And it makes interpersonal relationships in hospitals very toxic, it seems. Compassion fatigue also impacts the quality of personal relationships that medical personnel have back at home with loved ones and with their friends. Compassion fatigue increases stress at home, divorce rates, and social isolation. So these are the signs and symptoms that he lists about compassion fatigue. But this is what Figley says that is most important. He says the most insidious aspect of compassion fatigue is that it attacks the very core which brings helpers into this work. It attacks that. And what is that very core? Their empathy and their compassion. So you see, the point that he is making is there's a very insidious paradox about compassion and healthcare, and it is this. Those who are in the field of healthcare are those who are most motivated by And there are those who are most required to have compassion. But here's the paradox. But those are also precisely and exactly the ones who are most prone to lose compassion. Now, what Figley says about compassion fatigue is in some way related to what the great philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said many years ago. Nietzsche said, "He who fights monsters should take care, lest he thereby become a monster." And he says, if you gaze long enough into the abyss gazes also into you. Nietzsche's point is very profound. And it means that those people who are often at the frontiers and at the front lines of fighting and combating evil and disease, sickness, and death are surely evils. Those people who are at the frontiers of combating evil, they are so constantly face to face with evil that if they don't take care, they become immune to, insensitive to evil, and indeed even start mirroring evil. I don't know if you have noticed, but I have. I've noticed social workers who are working heroically, fighting injustices and evil in society. I've noticed, sometimes, unfortunately, they are so often constantly facing the bitterness and the resentments in the world that before long they become bitter, resentful people. That's in the area of social work. I see it in my own line of work. I've seen many pastors, people or Christian workers like me, who become fatigued and immune to spiritual realities and spiritual needs. I myself am often very prone to what we may call spiritual fatigue. We become insensitive. And it is beyond my competence to talk about compassion fatigue. I don't want to pontificate because I don't know how you can avoid it. I don't know how you can recover from it. But it would be remiss of me if I do not flag up the real possibility that an institution like yours and personnel such as you, who are built upon and building upon the foundation and motivation of compassion, you can be in danger of losing this very foundation and motivation of compassion. And what a better day or evening to call us back to this core value of compassion. Secondly, care. Your second core value is care. A couple of months back, I was in conversation with someone who was very high up in the hotel industry. He was overseeing a chain of five-star hotels in the country. And he told me something very interesting. He said, the best thing about being in the hotel industry is that almost all people who come to you, almost all people who come to hotels are happy people. He said, people come to hotels to celebrate a birthday, an anniversary, a promotion, a raise, a wedding, or something like that. They bring their joy to you to celebrate with you, and you, as a hotel, you host them, and you extend hospitality to them. And this is the best thing about the hotel industry, he said. And he's right. Hotel comes from the word hospitium in Latin, which means hospitality. But hotel is not the only word that means hospitality. Hotel is not the only word that comes from the Latin hospitium. Hospital also comes from the word hospitium. And it means exactly what hotel means, hospitality and being hospitable. The only difference between a hotel and a hospital would be this. If a hotel extends hospitality to the glad people of the world, a hospital extends hospitality to the sad, the bad, the physically bad, and the mad people of the world. That's the only difference, but a very important difference. And if we looked into the history of hospitals, we will find that in the ancient world and in the ancient civilizations, whether it is Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, or even India, there were health centers that were in the temples. And people with disorders would go to these health centers that were associated with the temples, and the priests there would try and heal them through religious rituals or magical practices. And sometimes they would sleep overnight, the priest would interpret their dream and then recommend remedies. But in the ancient world, there were no public institutions where people could go for prolonged stay. In the Greco-Roman world, the rich people would be visited by their personal physicians. For the poor people, they would run to the shop run by doctors and get treatment. They couldn't stay. And another common theme between community and diseased people in the ancient world is that usually people with diseases were often separated from society and community in the ancient world. The concept of the public hospital where anyone and everyone, the sick, the travelers, strangers, old and poor people, where they could go, where they could be received, and where they could be cared for. This concept of the hospital was not there in the ancient world. And history says that it began only with the Christian era. The example of Jesus healing the sick, touching lepers and the unclean and healing them, and the biblical emphasis on hospitality as a key Christian virtue. These were the motivations behind the beginning of hospitals. In AD 165, a plague known as the Antonine Plague, it ravaged the Roman world. And it lasted till AD 180. It killed about 5 million to 10 million people, including the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Scholars think that it was either measles or smallpox. We don't exactly know. Certainly I don't. The plague again returned later. But the first time the plague came, during that time in the Roman world, the most well-known and respected physician was Galen, who was physician to several Roman emperors and to the most prominent members of Roman society. But when the plague came, Galen abandoned the sick and the dying. And he fled Rome. He went to his country estate, hid there until the plague passed away. And then he returned to Rome. Even medical doctors, that was their attitude. The plague again, like I said earlier, it returned again in AD 250 and lasted till AD 262. But the second time the plague came, there was an eyewitness to the plague. And this eyewitness was Pope Dionysius, who was also the Bishop of Rome. And Pope Dionysius, as an eyewitness, he compared the response of the pagan Romans and of the Christian Romans. And he says, when the plague came, the non-Christian Romans, they pushed the sufferers away and they fled away even from their dearest. And they threw their dear ones out into roads even before they were dead. And they treated their unburied corpses as if it was dirt. They were throwing the deceased. On the other hand, he says this about Christians. Our Christians, they showed unbounded love and loyalty. They did not think about themselves, but only of one another. And they were heedless of the danger. They took charge of the sick, attended to their every need, and ministered to them. And in the process, some of them, they were infected with the plague. And they even died. One fled away, one moved towards the sick. Now, I do not mention the difference between the responses to score a point for Christians and for Christianity against other religions. I'm not saying that. We are not playing that game today of competition and one-upmanship. Indeed, if we were to play, one could say that during COVID-19, during that pandemic, Christians were, in many respects, not very different in their response to the disease. In fact, it could be said that during COVID-19, that in certain places, the shoe was in the other foot. For example, in Nagaland, as far as I could tell, it was the Sikhs and the Jains who did more than Christians for the sick and the vulnerable, who offered their gurudwaras and their temples as places of quarantine, of vaccination, and as places for feeding the poor and the hungry. But I mention these different responses to highlight the important difference between healing centers and hospitals. Healing centers that were places away from community, where diseased people were separated from community and society. And hospitals where people were welcomed, the sick and the diseased were welcomed into the community and society that is the hospital. And the key center, a key difference between the healing center and the hospital, the way I would put it would be like this. A healing center is primarily a place of cure, but a hospital is primarily a place of care. And of course, a hospital is a place of cure too, and people go to hospitals to get cured. No one is denying that. And I don't want to pit the idea of curing and against the idea of caring too strongly. But what is the difference between cure and care? There's an article in a medical journal. I'm not a medical doctor, but I did do a little bit of research in preparing for this. And I found an article called From Curing to Caring. And it's in a medical journal. And this is what it says. Curing implies a technical action that in some way prolongs the life of the patient or improves some physical problem. That's curing. It prolongs the life and improves a problem, a physical problem. Caring, on the other hand, implies the holistic process whereby the patient feels comforted by the treatment, and caring relates, it says, more to the quality of life than just the quantity of life or how long a life is lived. And the question that we have to ask ourselves, all of us, is, what is primary and ultimate? Is it curing or is it caring? Now, if someone says that the ultimate purpose of the medical profession is curing, and one could say that, that's fine, it is within our rights. But I would say, in response, that there are certain implications that do not bode very well. First of all, eventually everyone dies. Oh, sorry that I smiled while saying that. Yeah. Eventually everyone dies. All patients ultimately die. No life can be prolonged indefinitely. So in a sense, if cure is the primary and ultimate purpose, well, hospitals, medical professionals, and medical institutions will all ultimately fail. On the other hand, if care is primary and ultimate, and if it is a governing principle, then even if curing fails, care cannot be said to have failed. Any medical personnel who extends care till the end has not failed. I think of my own parents and their doctors and nurses who, though they could not cure them anymore, cared for them till the end. And I say, they did not fail because they cared. So cure cannot be ultimate, but care can be ultimate. But secondly, to presume that doctors or nurses or drugs, and I'm sorry to say this, doctors and nurses, Yeah. To presume that they cure or heal can be mistaken. And this is not my idea. This is the idea of C.S. Lewis, one of the greatest thinkers who ever lived. C.S. Lewis, he says that there is a sense in which no doctor ever heals anyone. Doctors don't heal. And he says doctors themselves will be the first ones to admit this. He says the magic is not in the medicine. The magic is not in the doctor. The magic is in the patient's body. And in Latin, it is the vis medicatrix naturae, the natural, the healing power of nature. It is the healing power of nature that heals. And all that medicines do and treatments do is they simulate and they stimulate the natural functions, or they remove the things that hinder the natural functions. So doctors don't cure. Medicines don't cure. They only simulate cure. Ultimately, it is nature, or one might even say God, who cures. So if we say that cure, we cure, no. Ultimately, we don't. God cures. But thirdly, if curing is the ultimate purpose of medicine, then in some way it also dehumanizes and depersonalizes people in the medical profession. It can also mean that machines and robots, I'm sure they are already, and artificial intelligence, and there might come a day when these machines with artificial intelligence can do a better job at curing and treating and operating people, better than humans. I'm not an expert in this, but one can imagine a day. But what these machines can never do, no matter how much they cure, they can never care as humans can. So if ultimately we say that the role of the medical personnel is to cure, we are unwittingly reducing these medical personnel who are humans and downgrading them to the status of machines and robots. But not just medical personnel, we also, if cure is the ultimate purpose of medicine, then we also reduce our patients to just diseases or automatons. About 50 years ago, there was a very famous ethicist by the name of Paul Ramsey. And Paul Ramsey, he wrote a book. And that book is simply titled, The Patient as Person. We must treat that person, that patient before you, as a person created in the image of God, who come to hospitals not just seeking for health cure, but for health care. My father-in-law is one of the senior-most physicians in Nagaland. And I do not think he's necessarily any better in his profession, although he is extremely good. But there's something that kind of sets him apart. He has a small clinic. One thing about him is people, his patients, really like him, perhaps a bit like Dr. Sailo. And a particular group of people particularly like him. And this particular group of people are the alcoholics. Yeah. And they keep coming back to him again and again and again, unfortunately. And very often he's not able to cure them. But he's able to listen to their stories, give them a personal touch, doesn't judge them, he communicates to them, and he attends to them, not just as patients to be cured, but as persons to be cared and cared for. Finally, the third core value of Bethany is commitment. In 2012, the Department of Health in England, they produced a document which was a strategy for nursing. And this strategy included what is called the 6 C's of nursing, the 6 C's. And the 6 C's are care, compassion, courage, communication, competence, and commitment. These 6 C's are extremely important for nursing. I think it's wonderful, and I read that it helped people a lot. It helped improve the quality of nursing care. But there's a sense in which I think commitment can be the overarching idea or concept. And under commitment, the rubric of commitment, we can slot the other C's. So we have the commitment to care, commitment to compassion, commitment to courage, commitment to communication, commitment to competence, and so on. In addition, please don't mind, I will be a little presumptuous as I conclude. I want to add a few more C's to that I think are important. Number 1, a commitment to community. A commitment to community. You are aware, as we are, that those of us who are not in the medical profession, we look to you, those of you who are here, we look up to doctors and nurses and experts. We find our security, our comfort, our healing from you. We put our hope in you. We trust your words and your actions. We entrust you with our lives. We put you in pedestals and distinguish you from us. We hero worship you, and I'm not exaggerating this. We look at you and look up to you as gods, demigods, and goddesses. That is true. But at the same time, what I would also appeal to you is, what you must be careful, very careful, is not to believe this lie. Do not believe the lie that any one of us is a god or a goddess that can be separated from the rest, fellow humans. Paul Ramsey again says, the doctor makes decisions as an expert, yes, but also as a man among men. She makes decisions as an expert, but also as a woman among women. You need us as much as we need you. And I don't say this to mean that you need us to make a living. Someone said, God cures and the doctor takes the fees. In other words, God does the healing, the doctor does the billing. But I say that to remind you, again, that you need us as much as we need you. And I mean that you need us frail, feeble, fallible, and fallen, common, ordinary people like us. You need us to remind yourselves that you too belong to our company, and you are one of us. Frail, feeble, fallible, and fallen. Secondly, a commitment to charity. In April this year, an article appeared in the Times of India. And that article, well written by an expert, it simply said that reviving private charitable hospitals is the solution to the healthcare crisis in India. And it was shocking for me because I found out reading this article that the government of India historically spends only 1 to 2% of the GDP of the country on healthcare. 1 to 2% only. There's no money in the public health sector. And that is why doctors and nurses don't want to work in the public health sector, because there are no financial incentives. On the other hand, the corporate hospitals, they have no financial incentive to open up big hospitals in remote areas. But the big hospitals in the cities are again too expensive, and they invest so much. And they have to be expensive, and it is beyond the reach of many ordinary people. And so this author, he says that we must promote charity hospitals more and more. And I know that private hospitals, they do a lot of charity work, in the background. They don't announce it, but they are doing. Bethany Hospital, I'm sure you have a lot of charity work behind the scenes. Heaven knows, angels count, God will reward. But as far as I can tell, there are 3 professions that have charity as their foundational motivation: religious work, educational work, and medical work. But what I have noticed, including in my own line of work, mission work and Christian ministry work, I'm really embarrassed to say, and it saddens me to say this, I'm increasingly seeing that all of these 3 charitable works are increasingly being driven more and more by money. And there's a deep nexus I've seen from the inside also between money and mission. I don't know how exactly it is in your line of work, but we must remember that when these noble vocations or professions become slaves of mammon, we forfeit our right to be called noble. And we have traded our nobility with ignobility, and we have sacrificed our nobility at the altar of money. So we must keep, again, charity central. Third, I'm coming towards the end. I'm almost there. A commitment to confidentiality. This is a personal thought. I once heard the true story of a person who was being treated by a psychiatrist for a mental ailment. As chance would have it, this patient and the psychiatrist, they bumped into each other at a party. The patient, the naive patient, was very friendly with the psychiatrist, and she was trying to have a conversation with the psychiatrist in the midst of, along with the others. But the doctor, to her surprise, acted as if she didn't know her, and she was very aloof and unfriendly, which disappointed the patient. The next time they met for an appointment, the patient asked the psychiatrist why she acted in this way. The psychiatrist said, "I acted in that way because I didn't want others to know that you had a mental illness and that you were being treated by me. I didn't want to give them a clue. I did it for reasons of confidentiality." And this story has remained with me. It's a true story. We come to you when we are injured, we are wounded, and we are most vulnerable, and we are deeply hurt. We come to you when we are dying. You are the first ones to receive us when we come into this world naked. And you are the last ones to bid us farewell when we leave the world. You see us and know us in and out. You see more of us than we will ever see and know more about us than we will ever know. We entrust you with ourselves and put our confidence in you. And we do so taking you into our deepest confidence and making you our deepest confidants. And I know most people in the medical profession, they don't break confidentiality unless it is professionally necessary. But unfortunately, I also know some who are not like you. And it is deeply sad when medical personnel break or speak in daylight what they see in the dark and proclaim from the rooftops what is whispered in the ear. And it is unbecoming and reflects poorly on such a noble profession. Fourth, a commitment to conscience. That document says that there must be courage. But courage in the medical profession is not just undertaking dangerous procedures or doing dangerous operations. It is not just professional courage. Courage is not just about doing what is professionally right. Courage also requires doing what is morally right and correct. The world of medicine is fraught with dilemmas, discussions, debates, and disputes. And there are many voices: the legal voice, the government voice, the business voice, the professional voice, the personal voice, the scientific voice, the administrative voice. So many voices in this cacophony. And it is extremely important that we do not let all these voices drown out that still small voice, the voice of conscience. I cannot tell you where to draw the lines. We cannot tell one another. But draw the lines we must. And we must draw our lines with a commitment to conscience. Which brings me to the last and final C. The C of calling, the commitment to calling. That still small voice inside and within is also the great voice beyond and before. The voice of God who has called you and who is calling all of us to our vocations. But how do we identify this voice? And how do we differentiate the voice of God from other voices? The voice of society, the voice of the needy, the voice of the ego, the voice of self-interest, the voice of the superego. How do we identify the voice of God? Frederick Buechner, one of the great authors of the 20th century, he says, when God calls a person to a particular kind of work, there are two criteria that are usually fulfilled. The first criterion is that person who is called to a special task by God will find that work deeply satisfying. And he will do that work for his own sake because he finds happiness in doing that work. That is the first criterion. The second criterion is when God calls a person specifically to a work, that work will be of benefit to others. It will meet the world's need in one way or another. So if someone is finding deep satisfaction in his work or her work, but if it is of no benefit to the world or to others, then that probably is not God's call. On the other hand, if he's helping the needy and the poor, and they're being greatly helped, but if he is deeply unhappy and joyless, again, that is probably not God's call upon his life. So Buechner says, the place, I love this, the place where God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The place where God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Respond to the call of God, your caller, with the deepest and the utmost commitment. I want to end by saying something about the term Bethany. I'm sure our founder knew this. I have no doubt he knew this when he chose Bethany. But I wonder how many of us are aware of the significance of Bethany. According to biblical scholars, the most probable meaning of the word Bethany, not just biblical scholars, historians also, the most probable meaning of Bethany is it means house of misery, house of suffering, or house of affliction. So Bethany Hospital quite literally means the hospitality in and of the house of affliction. What a beautiful name it is. But Bethany is also significant for at least two other reasons. First, it was in Bethany that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. And secondly, it was in Bethany, 2 nights before Jesus was crucified, it was in Bethany on Wednesday night that Jesus was anointed by that woman with that expensive perfume. And Jesus said that she did this to prepare him for his death and his burial. And so too may it always be with Bethany Hospital. May it be a place where you figuratively raise people from the dead and quite literally raise people from the bed. But even if you are not able to do that, to all who come to you, may Bethany Hospital be a place where you prepare people well, to die well, and to be buried well. May Bethany Hospital be a place where people not only get well, but also die Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting the three core values of nursing: compassion, care, commitment to community, charity, confidentiality, conscience, and a calling. Your insights and perspective were truly valuable and will forever be engraved in our hearts. We were all thoroughly engaged by your presentation. Thank you, sir. Now that we've had some foods for our thoughts, it's time for some melodious food for our ears. We have a very special guest this evening, an international concert artist trained in Singapore with piano as his major, along with voice, conducting, and composition. He has performed and conducted workshops in countries like Germany, UK, Hungary, Switzerland, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and many more. From Indian president and foreign dignitaries to socialites like Amir Khan, the Ambanis, his music has graced them all. He is a proud brand ambassador of two international music companies, AKG microphones, headphones, and car monitoring system, Austria. He's the first Indian to be labeled a Yamaha artist for Yamaha Pianos Japan. Here to enthrall us with his performance, let us welcome Nise Maruno on stage.
When you walk through the storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is the golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk
Thank you so much for having me here. I am truly humbled to be able to have this privilege to come and share my gift of music. For the next song, I would like to invite you all to join me. It is a very beautiful, common song. And I also would like to remind all of us to be kind, to spread love, play our role well, and make this world a wonderful place to live in. This is What a Wonderful World. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They really saying, I love you. I hear babies crying, I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They really saying, I love you. I hear babies crying, I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, everybody, what a lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I thought that ended too soon. Anyway, so it's beautiful. We were all moved in our seats, and it was lovely hearing you play. and we wish you the very best for many more to come. And now we have come to the end of the event. We would like to felicitate our guests, a special guest this evening, with a gift. May I request? May I request Mrs. Achula D. Sailo, Director, Bethany Hospital, to kindly do the honors. Yeah. Our first gift is for Dr. Kevichusa Anyu Ketase. May I please request you to come up on the stage? As a token of appreciation for being here, sir. Thank you. I would like to now call upon Nisi Maruno, the Yamaha artist who performed with a token of gift as an appreciation for their presence. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. And now, last but not least, may I request Dr. Rebecca L. I. Ryntathiang to pronounce the vote of thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I stand before you, overwhelmed with gratitude as we gather on this auspicious occasion. On behalf of the Bethany Hospital's family, it is both a privilege and an honor to extend my heartfelt appreciation to each and every one of you for taking the time from your busy schedules to grace us with your esteemed presence. First and foremost, I would like to express our deepest appreciation to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Ketusa Kevichusa. Your insightful and thought-provoking address has not only enriched our minds, but has also left an indelible mark in our hearts. Your wisdom has illuminated our path, and we are profoundly grateful for your presence here today. I also extend my gratitude to the exceptionally talented Nisi Maruno, a professional pianist whose enchanting performance added a touch of grace and emotion to this event. Your music transcended mere notes. It touched our soul and made this evening truly special. To our esteemed guests, individuals who have achieved excellence in their respective fields, family and friends, your presence here is a testament to your commitment to knowledge and culture. You are the pioneers of a better tomorrow. Your support and participation has elevated this gathering to new heights. We will always be grateful for your continuous and unwavering encouragement. I would like to express our sincerest gratitude to Mr. Charles Springrove for this beautiful space and also his constant cooperation and support since the very first day. They say it takes a village to make miracles happen, and I have witnessed this truth in the relentless dedication of the support crew. I would like to especially mention a few names: the team at Vertex Experience, the Hills people, Barmak, and MB Electricals for their outstanding contribution in making this event possible. I also extend my heartfelt gratitude to Mrs. Atu for transforming this space into this enchanting ambience. A special thank you to Mrs. Bandabla for her remarkable role as our MC, and Mr. Lalnun Sanga Ralte, who took the time and effort, may I add 10 days before his wedding, to paint a vivid and comprehensive picture of the vast life of the man we are honoring this evening in the booklets before you. Each of you have played a pivotal role in making this event a success. On behalf of the family, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to every member of the Bethany family. Each of you are the pillars that make Bethany Hospital what it is and what it stands for: compassion, care, and commitment. In unity, love, and respect for one another, we have weathered every storm and conquered every mountain that came our way. And together, we will continue to do so. As a daughter, I say, my father's legacy continues because of each one of you. As we depart from here today, let us carry with us the knowledge, inspiration, and camaraderie that this special program has provided. Together, we can continue to nurture a culture of learning and appreciation for intellectual exploration and creativity. Thank you all for being a part of this extraordinary evening. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Rebecca. On that beautiful note, we have come to the end of the formal event. Well, I welcome you all to join us for dinner. But before you leave, we would also like to tell you that we have left you a gift as a token of appreciation for you to take home. Please take it with you along with the booklet. And before we proceed for dinner, may I once again request our honorable speaker, Dr. Kethuser Anyokevichusa, to kindly say grace.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, all good things come from you, including food. And now as we partake of it, we pray that you bless the food and bless the fellowship around the food. And Lord, we also pray that you will provide for those who are without food, even tonight, and provide it even through us. In Jesus' blessed name we pray. Amen.